Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Find a Way podcast with Dusty. I apologize for my voice. I had a recent stage production where my voice went out a little bit, but I think we're going to be just fine. The reason I wanted to pop in and do an episode real quick is I've had a really good parallel example of what food addiction looks like, and I really wanted to provide kind of my thoughts on it simply because I feel like that empathy or that understanding or that connectivity to what others are facing and battling, it provides some sort of comfort knowing that, hey, yeah, that there's a connection there. Like, oh, I get that connection. Or yeah, I see how that relates. And, oftentimes those moments provide some sort of clarity on a pathway forward or a pathway through overcoming it. It's almost like if you know the route, you know how to maybe get there faster. If you know the route, you can be more strategic in how you get from A to B. I've found that being very analytical with running, as an example, has made me a better runner, especially when it comes to races or runs that I do. If I strategically plan out the course and if I know more about the route, if I know more about the route, I'm just better prepared. So I was thinking about the other day how much food addiction is embedded within us, and how if you knew, as an example, that bread, like the most basic common thing that we all have, if you knew that bread was something that you were allergic to, and that if you ate it, you would have a reaction. It'd be very easy for most to say, well, just avoid bread. Just avoid a very basic necessity, that very basic. And you can say bread, you can say water. You can, water maybe is a good example of something that is very vital to what you need. You need water. But what if you found out that you were allergic to water and that you had to find some sort of alternative, and now I know everything's connected or everything has water, but really I think this is a really good parallel, whether you're using bread, water, using many different forms of examples. Food addiction, what that looks like on a daily basis is, I know that if I dive in and eat the way I want to, it's going to give me a reaction that's going to impact me. It's going to set me back. And that draw to bread, that draw to water, is not just a drawing of your own self kind of determination, but that draw is connected to a dopamine receptor that releases a feel-good hormone that makes you feel good when you dive in like that. And if you get that food addiction isn't just a decision that you're making, but oftentimes is the result of things behind the scenes that are working against you, you can better position yourself mentally to say, yes, I struggle with binge eating, or yes, I struggle with food addiction, and I can't just go on a diet or an exercise program to fix that. I have to really get down to the root of where I'm allowing a dopamine hit to connect itself to food. So you're facing a stress, you're facing something in life, and that big event, you need to decompress. I have recently heard of a pastor of a major church get removed from his position because he got a DUI. And he was in the middle of building some churches. He was in the midst of doing a lot of expansion. He was doing a lot of great things for his home church. But because of that busyness, all of a sudden something he didn't struggle with before is now something he struggles with now. And it's obviously an alleviation. It's obviously some sort of relief that is brought from drinking. Like, you don't just drink and say, hey, I feel like alcohol for the most part doesn't taste good. Really, it's like rubbing alcohol, let me throw a little flavor in there. It's like, it's not like a yum factor. I don't know. In my days, I don't drink now, but in my days that I did, I was like, this isn't like good. I don't know if that makes sense. But like, obviously, that lack of it's good became, well, this is something that I can use as an escape. And so connecting your dopamine receptor to food means knowing that food has become an escape, has become something that you've used to get out of or to feel better from situations. And so because of that, you're no longer beating yourself up as much, knowing that, oh, it's all my doing of this decision to do this. Yes, we make the choices, but there's something going on underneath that is really pushing us towards something that is going to harm us in the long run. Like making that, taking that bite of bread, knowing that a reaction is going to come. Really, food addiction, what it looks like is you've got the bread in your hand, or you're sitting in a parking lot, sitting wherever you're at, making that decision for either fast food, or you're making a decision for diving in and getting that whole bag of chips or that entire pint of ice cream, and you're weighing it, knowing that I'm going to have that gushy feeling of relief, that dopamine hit, but the reaction later is going to harm me. And that's what it looks like. That's what food addiction in its truest form looks like. You are struggling, knowing that this is going to hurt me, but you make the decision on a daily basis, especially when you're in peak binge eating or peak, thoughts of, I just don't care, I'm just going to dive in. You're in that because you're facing something that is partly out of your control. And I guess I provide some understanding to those that maybe don't get what food addiction is. Like, imagine your favorite food, the thing that you could have every single day. That thing that is connected to something that harms you and that has led to a life of feeling inadequate or feeling less than or feeling not the tip-top shape or the best that you could be. Like, you feel these things because of something that is not 100% in your control. And dealing with it every single day. You're reminded every single time you look into the mirror, feeling that feeling. And it's just a great parallel that I thought of the other day that really helps me understand how I feel first in my food addiction. Like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's the battle. Like, I know getting up to 534 pounds, I know what that feels, what that looks like. And yeah, though, that's a parallel. So I want to provide another route in your connectivity mentally with your journey, that food addiction is not 100% your self-doing intentionally, but the connectivity that you have with food and the relief that it provides, the alleviation, that is connected to a deeper dopamine hit that makes you feel good when you dive in. And so, what's this? What's the way out? What's the way through? Transfer of addiction is one. It's. Let me start by saying therapy is, of course, number one. Talking it out. I guess I'm giving you what I experienced and what has helped, and hopes that it would provide some alleviation. Of course, therapy is going to be the number one, trained professional. I'll tell you what my experience was, and then that's what I'll give is my experience. I went through a transfer of addiction where it went through, I went to shopping, clothes shopping. I went through shoe shopping. I went through a relief found when I could go and look at the store shelves and buy something. I all of a sudden got that gushy kind of satisfied feeling from shopping. then it started moving itself over to the gym. That if I couldn't go to the gym, I got very on edge. I got very just cranky. My wife calls it out, like, "Oh, have you been to the gym today?" And she just knows it so well that, like, I get cranky because I don't have that alleviation. And it's weird because you think the gym, that's healthy. That's, you're going to the gym, you're working out, and there's a level of good to moving it to the gym because you're really diving into something that is going to make your health better. I mean, you could think about running, weightlifting, bodybuilding, any number of things that becomes, an addiction that you transfer from food. And a lot of folks in the weight loss surgery community have that because all of a sudden their situation with surgery doesn't allow them to eat. Just your stomach physically doesn't allow you to eat as you did. So because of that struggle, there's an immediate transfer of addiction. And I'll say this about transferring of addiction. It's not immediately the solution, but it provides another way to understand the struggle to work through it. And I'll give you an example. You go clothes shopping and you realize, man, I'm addicted to clothes. I've transferred my addiction to clothes. Eventually you're going to get to a point where you don't have room for any more clothes. You don't have any more room for shoes. You don't have any more room for these things. And you're buying a black shirt when you have 6 black shirts. And then there's a moment, and I've felt this myself, where there's just this moment of, like, I don't need this. So instead of food addiction, diving in, I can't do this. It's, I can't do this again. That's post. There is a transfer of addiction to clothes to where you can have a post regret. And you're getting to the closet with the clothes that you just bought, and you're like, I don't need this. That can happen, but when we're talking about transfer of addiction in some sort of another way, I have been in clothing stores, have had clothes in my hand, and I have coached myself to say, okay, check if you really need this. Check if you really need this. And I've had so many moments where I'm like, I don't need this. Now think about the addiction itself. Food you need to survive. You're making that decision not to have it. Well, you got to have something else. You got to eat. You think about clothing. You transfer over to clothing. You don't need clothing to live, especially if you already have some clothes. You don't need clothing to live. So you almost move in addiction to something that isn't dependent on your life. Like, I need this to live. No, you don't need clothes to live. So it's not, hey, do this, but it's, hey, I did this and it helped. And if it's an idea and if it's a possibility for you and there's a healthy way to transfer, food addiction isn't just addressed in a moment, in a session, in an Instagram post. It is the consistency of the practice over the scope of many, like, I always think of the best way to relate how long something's going to take. You're going to be on the journey as long as it takes for you to forget the first day that you started. I don't remember the first day I started. I don't. I remember, the surgery. I remember that day, 9 years ago. But I had to start before that, 2 weeks before, a month before. I had to prepare. I don't remember those first decisions of breaking away from food addiction. I don't remember all the times where I just looked at clothes and were like, I don't need that. I've had moments like that, but I can't directly just think about that. It's all a blur at this point because it's happened so much. So in a food addiction alleviation, a possible way out is a transfer. It's like, well, that's spoken of negatively. It is. Transfer of addiction to smoking or drugs and all those things, those can be real trouble. And you've got to be careful of those things. And it's not to say that, hey, transfer of addictions for everybody. For me, this is what happened. This is how 9 years later, I've lost the weight and I've maintained. I've gone through fluctuations of 10 pounds. That's it. 10 pounds. I mean, I think the common ratio is like 5 to 15 pounds from your lowest weight. Like, I've never had this huge explosion of weight to where I'm like, okay, I need to really rethink and get back. I've just never had that. It's because my particular journey, what happened is I had food addiction, couldn't enjoy food anymore, so I transferred addiction to shopping, to shoes. I transferred addiction to the gym. Then I had moments in the span of 2.5 to 3 to 5 years, different moments along the way in different ways, in different forms, in different avenues where I realized I can't cope with this. And it's like, well, how do you deal? It's interesting, in the moments of, yeah, I can remember this so vividly. I remember one time that I did actually turn down in like an outfit from the store. I turned it down, and I remember having this mourning feeling. It's weird. Like this really just somber death feeling. And it's like, I wonder if a portion of my addiction died. Like it died in saying that I can't have this. I can't live like this. And it's almost like maybe a neurotransmitter that it was connected to a feel-good hit, all of a sudden now didn't know that it could find alleviation that way. And that receptor died. I don't know. Let's take a look today on how the receptors are doing. I can't do that, but really I can tell you how I feel and how it changed me. Like, it really did change how I looked at alleviation. Like, it's not that I didn't look for relief in different situations after that, but it's almost like I got better at dealing with the stressful things of life in a better way, just because I didn't have that, I've got to do this, I need this desperation. Like, it just wasn't there. So I'm hoping this provides some sort of way out, some sort of route in understanding food addiction and how and why it's important to understand the facets of it, because it really is a life debilitating thing, and to understand and to work through it to get better is so important. So thanks for tuning into this particular episode, and I will talk to you on the next one. Take care.